Good morning and welcome to International Desk. I am your anchor, Mujisola Shulaja. This week, our spotlight is on a critical sector of the economy, which is affecting millions of people across the continent. We're talking about agriculture. We all know that food insecurity is reaching a staggering level, with children and women mostly affected. A report has it that majority of Africa's population, about 78% of more than 1 billion people, remain unable to afford healthy diet, compared with 42% at the global level, and the number is rising. Joining me via Zoom today is a policy expert, former governance advisor with United Kingdom's Department for International Development, the FID, former COA presidential candidate, a lawyer, an Afro-jazz musician, and so much more. He is Dr. Shina Adegbero. Dr. Adegbero, good morning, and FAGBENRO, beg your pardon, you're most welcome.
Good morning, good morning. Nice to be on the program, thank you.
Yes, let me begin on a personal note. An economist, a lawyer, an Afro-jazz musician. Tell me briefly the interest. Why the combination of the three?
Well, you know, it's simple. You know, since I was a kid, I've always played music. My grandfather bought me my first guitar while I was 7. In those days, we had school bands. I went to Government College in Ibadan. I was a member of the school band, became band leader in Form 5. Went to Federal Government College in we had a band. I became band leader in Upper 6. I was in the University of Ife. We had a band. We played all over the country. I was in the University of Ibadan. We had a band. It's a talent, which I have maintained. Others like sports. Others play football. That's where my cut is. Fortunately, my own interest never dies, as long as you have your talent. My first degree was in economics.
Yes.
In economics, and my second degree was in law. My master's degree was in information science. And I have worked, you know, in all those areas, you know, before I ended up doing, you know, development work and working in international development.
Okay, let's quickly.
Policy kind of music, you know that. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Fagbero, let's quickly move to our topic for discussion today: food insecurity in Africa.
Yes.
Yes, I'll begin with this report that says, as at 24th of July, a report says that the world is falling significantly short of achieving SDG 2, which is zero hunger by 2030. You know, and you know, Africa, we have lots of land. So what are the root causes of food insecurity in Africa? Why are we in the state that we are now?
Okay, I think the primary cause is the fact that we do not consider food security as national security. Those who can guarantee food security is a priority. You know, Africa started off, especially during the colonial ages, as actually the food basket of the world. And after a while, when colonial masters, so to speak, considered that they were getting too dependent on Africa, they started subsidizing their own farmers to be able to produce at scale, you know. So there is an issue of, number one, a component of national security, our not being able to understand, our own, the capacity, the fullest capacity of our own resources, including human resources to actually produce this food. Africa to a large extent has been primarily dependent on things like research. Since our colonial days, we have been highly dependent, and we have moved from dependence from certain aspects to actually dependence on food, from abroad, right? There has been a lot of diversion from export and agri for demand of a foreign market. So the foreign market requirements for agriculture have been, products like cocoa, products that go into the processing plants, of those foreign markets. So there's a demand pool for that. Whereas here, so our people have been divided. The farmers now go and look for work, elsewhere. Our policies in Greek expansion, development planning in terms of is not integrated international security. And but for what the African development trying to do recently, things would have been pretty bad. African Development Bank, sorry, is trying to do.
Yes, I'm having audio challenge. The line it's breaking sort of, so I could hardly, some points are missing. But then, you said if not for Africa Development Bank, that things will have really gone very, very bad. Now, tell us the few things that AFDB is actually doing to improve the situation.
I think the principal thing that AFDB is doing is High Five program that links agriculture with trade, with power, with infrastructure. Because at the very heart of food security, and is the other thing, there are certain things tied to that element. There is power, because agri-production and food production in those days was much less dependent on power. You cannot drive any poultry or livestock mechanism without adequate, especially to the rural areas, is significant. There is also the area of human capacity. I wouldn't attribute this solely to AFDP, but I would say that AFDP sort of drives a recognition of the fact that we need more capacity in terms of people who would actually drive new, modern age agric and food production value chains. So to that extent, that what I would say has been the role of the AFDP. Basically, if you can't remember anything about the AFDP, remember the High Five policy. That is 5 policies that are integrated and are linked, and in which agriculture is a primary beneficiary. It is up to the nations. It is up to the state. States of Africa, right? You utilize manner that is consistent with those high fives, affect agriculture and food security into the new development paradigm in a way that is choose that new development paradigm as a strategic vocation.
Okay, Dr. FAGBENRO-BYRON, we're still having this audio challenge, so we'll go on a quick break. When we come back, the program will continue. So stay with the International Desk on Ogtv Television. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. It's still International Desk on the People's Daily, Ogun State Television, and I have a policy expert, Dr. FAGBENRO-BYRON, joining me via Zoom to talk about food insecurity in Africa. Now, Dr. FAGBENRO-BYRON.
Yes, please.
Yes, let's move to the issue of regional trade. Somebody said, James Wanga, he said Africans would rather trade with countries like Ukraine, rather than the import food from countries like Ukraine, rather than other African countries. And this is actually affecting regional trade. So what can you say about that?
Well, there are 2 or 3 things responsible for that. In the first place, the access, even within Africa, in terms of movement within Africa, is not as robust and as open as it should be. Take, for example, before independence in Nigeria as well, a lot of the trade, even within Nigeria, was not as free as it is right now. In most African countries, Nigeria, to get a visa into most African countries for Nigeria, you really need to work hard. It's easier for a Ukrainian, for example, to get a visa into certain countries in Africa. It is easier for an American, a British person, to get a visa into countries in Africa than for Africans to get in African countries. That's one. Number 2 is the fact of the currency and the impression that is given of African currencies is that they are not strong enough, they are not international enough, they are not robust enough. And this is one of the reasons why ECOWAS is trying to or at least made an attempt to have some kind of a union currency. And we don't have, if for example, we all had, all our currencies was denominated or predicated on gold instead of on dollar, right? Then our currencies wouldn't be externally dependent. So since your currencies, since the value of your currency is externally dependent, there's a tendency that the movement of your trade, the movement of your economics, the movement of your commerce would be towards that, towards that currency, and that is currencies outside Africa. So this is why I also, of the some of the policies by the African Development Bank, particularly that talks about the linkages between African countries, the linkages between African markets, and that Africans should be part players in the value chains of commodities produced in Africa. Take, for example, somebody who is producing cocoa in Africa. Another African country should be at the forefront of producing chocolates. One country is producing steel. Another country should be able to be an expert in, in making things like stainless steel. One country is for cobalt. Another country should be expert in lithium and battery. All African countries, essentially, we need to be value-adding before, but also integrated. So Africa is simply not integrated as it should be, and that is why you have that problem.
That's true. Integration is lacking. That's really true. But then, what are
Can I mention something else? Okay. Those foreign countries, they highly subsidize their farmers. So whether they sell or not, there is.
Why the shift?
Well, you see, well, okay, it's partly our fault in the sense that Do you know how many agricultural research institutions we have in Nigeria? We have about 6 in Ibadan alone, including the world-renowned International Tropical IITA. We have various for different all over the country. The question is that, what our research institutions produce, how well have we developed our research institutions? One thing we don't do is that we do as the, look, the truth of the matter is that any other continent outside Africa is a competitor in the global market with Africa. And you see, we tend to take more advice from our competitors. You don't take advice from your competitors and expect to be either ahead of them or outdo them. What you do is you learn from them. We should do as they do and not as they say. They will tell us not to subsidize a Greek because that will violate some Global World Trade Organization policy, because we want a world with open and free market. But they subsidize a Greek abroad. They subsidize a Greek in the US, they subsidize a Greek in Denmark, they subsidize a Greek in Ukraine, they subsidize any of these countries. They heavily subsidize domestic production of a Greek for feeding and for export. So we don't do that. And then I refer to the research component. You see, I'm sorry, but before you have development, you must have research. Because research produces that which takes you to the next level. It produces that which gives you a cutting edge. Research, the knowledge from research produces what puts you ahead. All the stuff that we don't produce, all the stuff that we've neglected to produce. Right now as we speak, I'm speaking from Ekiti State. And Ekiti State used to be a hub of the production of cotton. And that is why before the 1970s, Ekiti Textile Mills, Ekiti Textile Mills here, was producing cotton for virtually all the school uniforms in the Western region. Now all of a sudden nobody grows cotton again in Ekiti. And you have this with shea butter, you have this with cashew, and you have it in pockets and pockets like that all over the country. So we don't have a coherent agri policy, which ordinarily should start right from, from nursery school. In our secondary school, and this is a bit anecdotal. In the secondary school, when you're in secondary school, when they punish you, the first thing they do is they give you a cutlass and send you to the farm. So all our children and not only at federal level, but cascaded down to the local governments is the way to go.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. FAGBENRO-BYRON. The time is fast spent, but let's briefly, let's have your last words for now on this topic. The way forward.
Okay. Okay, I would say food production is for food production is for two essential things: subsistence, trade, and subsistence and trade. And I think there is the cycle for food production has transcended just going to the scientific issues. There are defense issues about it, and there are international and geopolitical dimensions to it. What country is producing what and why are they producing it? What country is forcing you or convincing you to produce a certain product and neglect others, and why? There is an intelligence element to this as well, an intelligence gathering, So, and I don't think we have enough, or we're working hard enough to gather as much information, because everything is information and intelligence guided. Your agri planning, your agri security, what grows where, who should grow what, and what should grow where. No foreign country should come here to tell us what to grow and how to, and what kind of seeds to use. The GMO issue is another issue. We don't have enough time on this program to address it. But all I'll say is this, very, very simple. It's part of national security. You don't get food security, your national security is gone.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. FAGBENRO.
Thank you very much, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, we really appreciate your time with us.
Thank you, Moji.
Yes, and that is about all we'll take on International Desk. This week, it's been food insecurity in Africa. And Dr. FAGBENRO-BYRON mentioned research, the fact that a lot of African countries are no longer into research. And he also mentioned the fact that we should learn rather than do what the foreign competitors tell us to do. We should learn from them and not do everything they tell us to do. So we appreciate Dr. FAGBENRO-BYRON for his position, for sharing his thoughts on the program with us. That's all on International Desk this week. Hopefully next week we'll bring in a farmer to talk about the role climate change, insecurity, and so much more play in food insecurity in Africa. I am Mojisola Sholaja. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.